You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
All right, Mike, it's trade deadline day. Here we are on the hard foul, and the X-Man cometh. You know, the first X-Man since Xavier McDaniels was signed with the Green and was one of the big free agent signings on a very shitty Celtics team back in the mid-90s. But Celtics acquire Xavier Tillman for Lamar Stevens and 2 future second-round picks. And on top of that, they kind of topped it all off with a win over the Hawks last night. Mike, I'll let you choose if you want to start with Tillman, you want to start with the Hawks, but I think for the folks that listening, how we're going to go through those two things, the game last night briefly. We're going to talk about Xavier Tillman, what it means for the Celtics, and then there's potential the Celtics now can make another move where I think most people thought we're looking at just one addition after the trade deadline. The Celtics have set themselves up through this trade where they can make a second move. We'll get into that and we'll get around the league. Always a fun day here on NBA trade deadline. Mike, how you doing? Big day in the NBA, always fun, ready to go.
Really big day in the NBA. I'm really looking forward to see what Milwaukee's going to do today to address some of their needs. So love this day, trade deadline day. I bet you there's going to be a lot of moves. I don't know how many of them will be big and significant moves, but
Mike, can I just cut you off? Cut you off real quick. Right now, while we're recording it, so people know it's 8:20 in the morning. So by the time you listen to this, it's probably going to be, already not current. But we'll do the best we can. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. So I'd like to jump onto the Hawks game last night, Jim, and just say that I thought it was a really entertaining game. I had a feeling the Hawks were going to show up because they've actually been playing really well recently. Yeah. I think they came into last night with a 5-game winning streak. I may be wrong, but they've at least either won 5 in a row or 4 or 5. I can't understand how that team is so bad year after year with the amount of talent that they have.
Yeah.
And they run through coaches too. So it's bizarre to me. I thought they played the Celtics so good in the first round last year that it was going to continue into this year. But they just don't want to play defense. And you saw that last night against Boston. The Celtics struggled shooting probably up until like the fourth quarter. But the Celtics really got what they wanted inside. They were able to get to the hoop. Porzingis was able to get his. The ball movement last night by Boston, I thought for the majority of the game was really good. They had some spots in the third quarter where things were a little iffy and started to turn the ball over a lot. A lot of turnovers versus Atlanta that weren't forced, so that was ugly. But another really interesting thing about last night, for those people who hate Missoula ball, the Celtics hit 8 threes in the fourth quarter last night, but I thought they were good shots. And they were within the rhythm of the offense. Out of the 28 points they scored in the fourth last night, 24 were from 3. So White and Porzingis, they just got red hot, and I think that was the difference.
Yeah, no, I thought.
And their defense on Trey Young was pretty good, I thought, especially at the rim.
Yeah, so I thought overall they did some things really well, and you mentioned a bunch of them. I thought their offense in the first 3 quarters were really good. I think you were correct, and when you were texting me last night, that they took too many threes in the fourth quarter, particularly in the last 2 minutes in the game, where they could basically get any shot they wanted at any point versus that Atlanta defense, which is really, really bad. I thought they did a good job after the first quarter, in particularly of gang rebounding on the defensive glass. They didn't give Atlanta a ton of second chance points. When they did, it was off of like blocked shots or kind of weird long rebounds that happen throughout any game and at any level of basketball. And then, they were okay defensively. They certainly played with energy. I think they made quite a few mistakes on that end, but they did a good job against a really good offensive team. The thing that kept Atlanta in the game was just the turnovers. It was careless turnovers that were often unforced. or just kind of sloppiness that, you get to these points of the game where you would be up 4 with a chance to go up 7 or up 7 with a chance to go up 10 and really build some momentum, and you dribble it off your foot, or you set an illegal screen, or you name it. And I know that sounds like it's nitpicking, but if this team doesn't turn the ball over, they move the ball so well, they're going to be fine just about anyone against anyone. And that was the only thing that even kept Atlanta within shouting distance. So it was a good win. I think it should be noted that, Atlanta had Murray out, so they weren't at full strength.
Capella too.
And Capella, yep. And I think, the Celtics still on this homestand really have not put a game together where you look at they're kind of flying on all cylinders. And I'm not sure we're going to see that until after the All-Star break. If, I just think I'm being honest. I think this team is looking towards the All-Star break. And I think even seeing that with the management of the roster here, Jaylen Brown had a game off versus Memphis. Last night it was Holiday after he practiced with the team. And so I think versus the Wizards, you're going to see the White or Tatum have the night off there. And I think you're going to see more of that. I wouldn't even be surprised against Miami if someone's getting a night off. I think you're going to see a lot of management that way, which, is a good thing. Last night wasn't a blowout, and still I don't think anyone played over 35 minutes. And to me, that's a really good job by Missoula. That's the thing you need to be looking out for. Mike, the X-Man.
Yeah, and just one last thing about the game last night, Jim. The fourth quarter, those last 2 minutes, the Celtics are, they're really lucky that Sadiq Bey missed that 3 in the corner. They did not execute well at the end of that game, so that's something that they have to clean up. They've been up and down with that this year. There's been times where they've been great in the last 2 minutes of the game, but last night, to give up the run that they gave, and it almost got really uncomfortable, but, Bey missed that shot, so that's good. So, yeah, Jim, the X-Man, what are your thoughts on Xavier Tillman coming to the Celtics? It's a small move, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
I think it's, I think it's really good. Obviously, he's a guy that is a great defender. Maybe great's a little bit over the top, but he's really solid, and he can defend bigger guys. He's had a lot of success in his career against bigger guys and guys that are really talented. He's done pretty well against Jokic. He's done pretty well against Embiid. He can be a pain in the ass, to be honest. And not only that, is he can cover wings as well. So on that end of the floor, and he's played in big games. He's been a part of the Memphis rotation. So it's not like you're getting a guy who has no playoff experience. He has that, and he's been solid. He's not a great offensive player. He's a terrible shooter. But I don't think that's what you're bringing him in for. What I really like about this move is, we didn't give up a lot. It's Lamar Stevens, a couple second-round picks, but Brad Stevens is removing excuses from this team. I think with a move like this, if you get into a 7-game series against the Nuggets, if Embiid comes back, doesn't look likely, or to some extent Giannis, and the Bucks, you can kind of look at the Celtics roster now and say, beyond Al, they don't match up really well at all to throw bodies at these guys. This gives them another body. Now, is he going to be the reason they win or lose those series? No. But it eliminates an excuse that you didn't have enough bodies to throw at these guys. And I just like what Brad's doing there. And he's looking at this not as a season as a whole, but looking at this as potential playoff matchups, which is exactly what he should be doing at this point. And I think it's a good move for that reason.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. I was looking at his numbers. He definitely has had a history of showing up and defending well against, those type of guys. Like you said, I agree. He's not a difference maker, and you didn't have to give up much for him, which is always good too. I don't think he helps you much at the offensive end, but this past month, January, he's had some big games. I know he had one game he scored over 20, so he's not terrible offensively. He's not a great shooter. Mm-hmm. He's the type of guy who's only been in the league for 4 years that it feels like he's been playing for 10.
Yeah, he's not an old
Yeah,
guy. He's got that old guy look to him too.
yeah. He brings pedigree from college as well. He's a national championship uh, winner. He's got the playoff experience, so I think he's going to come in. He's going to fit right in with this team and be respected. I think his role is going to be easy to figure out. His adjustment for him, this is going to be for any player that comes to Boston, is, he probably played pretty consistently this season in Memphis. Getting in there every game at least, not like huge minutes, but playing. That's not going to happen here. So there's going to be nights when he doesn't play at all, and that's going to be on him to adjust to that fact for the rest of the season. But he's got a chance to win a ring now, and I do think he's going to play in the playoffs. There's going to be times where people are going to be in foul trouble against Milwaukee, and hopefully when they play Denver in the finals, he'll have his moments. So this is a solid pickup. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. I think when we talked about big guys, there was a lot of talk about like an Andre Drummond or something. This is way more valuable than that. So yeah, it's a nice job by Brad. Once again, right?
Yeah, no, and I actually think you bring up a really good point about the playing time, and he may not get those minutes, and we look at that as, from a Celtics perspective, as he should just accept that because he's going to win a championship. But this is a guy that hasn't made money in the league. He's making $1.9 million, and now he needs to go to a new city where he's going to either have to rent out or live in a hotel, and it's going to be pretty expensive. And I know he's making $1.9 million, and you think he should be fine, but this was going to be, he's coming up on his first real opportunity to make some money. And so now you're going to have to ask him to play a lot less, kind of advertise himself a lot less, and with the promise that if you do this right, you're gonna have the opportunity to showcase yourself in the playoffs. So I do think you bring up a good point. I don't think it's as simple as that, and I think he is the type of professional will be fine, but it still doesn't make it easy. I don't think it doesn't make it easy.
Yeah, I don't think I get what you're saying, but I don't think he was getting more than a minimum contract next year anyways. So, but
oh, really? You don't think so, huh?
No, I don't. I don't think so. I think he would have probably got like another 1-year deal with an player option from Memphis or something. But who knows? I don't know what the free agent class looks like next year. Sometimes the money gets crazy, but he doesn't seem like a guy that would get paid very much. Can't shoot, man. That's like a big thing in the league now.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
You really he can't shoot, can he?
Not really. I mean, he shoots the threes. He throws them up there, but they're not necessarily going in. So, Jim, now that he's here, I know you spoke about that. It opens the door for a second move for the Celtics. So why don't you explain that a little bit to me? Because outside of him matching contracts, I thought with Stevens, I didn't see anything. Is that because they still have the TPE available? So why don't you talk about your thoughts there?
So the Celtics, Mike, can, since they traded a play for player, this Grant Williams trade exception is still there. They also, they also have guys that they can ship out for minimum guys, so they can still match salary to bring guys in, which I think is going to be their preferred way. What was good about this deal is it does nothing to the luxury tax going forward. And so, it's kind of a 1-for-1. And so it saves them there. It doesn't hurt them going into next season. So I they can still use this Grant Williams trade exception. I wonder if they do make another trade, if they just try to match salaries again. And some guys that are available that fit within the trade exception. I think what they're looking for now is either guard, player, or wing. Sadiq Bey, who we saw last night, that I'm not so sure is going to get moved anymore. 1 year, $4.5 million. Jason Tate from the Houston Rockets, $6.5 million, fits into that. David Roddy from Memphis is kind of a wing. He's at $4 million. Jalen McDaniels over in Toronto, $4.5 million. He has 2 years, so there's probably a little bit more of an appetite for something like that. Corey Crispert from Washington, $4.5 million. Again, he's signed through 25. Lonnie Walker, who's having a career year down in Brooklyn, $2.5 million. So that wouldn't even have to be grand. I think you could match salaries with something like that.
Yeah.
Chris Dunn, 1 year, $3 million. And beyond that, it's mostly bigs. Reggie Bullock, 1 year, $2 million dollars. So I think that's kind of the list you're looking at if you're the Celtics. Maybe Seti Osman, but he's outside that Grant Williams number, and that's not something I think they're going to do. He's at
No.
$7 million. From that list, what names kind of intrigue you the most?
All the wings that you listed. Any one of those wings that you bring in, they're not going to Milwaukee, and they certainly help you in the regular season with the stretch here against the Celtics. Have the second easiest record in the NBA. There's going to be an opportunity here to really give Tatum and Brown some nights off. We want them to stay above that 65 game threshold, obviously, but or even not just nights off, cut down their minutes, all that good stuff. Corey Crispin, he can shoot the ball. I've seen him defend hard against the Celtics when they played Washington for a team that doesn't defend at all. I don't know if he can actually defend, but obviously Sadiq Bey is a name that everybody loves, but I think you're talking about first round picks in that trade. Yeah, that's a list. I mean, Jaden McDaniels, to me, I really like because he plays hard. Every time I watch him play, he's playing hard, especially against the Celtics this year. He got hot against the Celtics, but he's not necessarily a great shooter.
No.
And he's got that second year on his contract, which I really like as well, because then, he's a guy that you can still have on your roster for next season too. I would love that if they brought him in, just because I feel like they need guys who are just going to play hard, that are going to, and Jaden McDaniels is the type of guy that's not playing a lot already. So if he comes here,
Jalen
McDaniels. So if he comes here, I think he'll accept that role more than other guys who aren't going to play a lot. And when he plays, he's going to come in and bring it. And, I think all those guys on that list, with the way Brissett has played this year, I think they're all an upgrade over him. So, yeah, I'm happy with all those guys. And even if it's a Chris Dunn, the challenge with the Chris Dunn, though, is he's a starting point guard right now in the NBA. So he's coming here. He's not going to play over Peyton Pritchard. So is he going to fit in? And I'm not making that deal just for the talent. Like, he's playing for a contract. Is he going to fit in? And I'm not trading for him if he's not going to buy in. You got to factor that in too.
Yeah, I actually don't think Chris Dunn would be a tough guy to factor in. I mean, he's had a resurgence in his career. He's been out of the league, so I think he understands where his place is right now and how he's viewed. He's a good defender. He can cover bigger wings, so I think he'd be helpful there. He's actually someone that really interests me. Reggie Bullock's a guy that's had some success. Jordan Nwora, who I've left out, is also available or could be available. He's a guy that, he's played pretty well for Toronto and would fit this mold as well. I know there's a lot of lust after Lonnie Walker, and for good reason. He was really good in the playoffs for the Lakers last year. He's been really good this year. He's on a $2.5 million deal. But that is a guy that I think, in a lot of ways, it'd be humbling for him to come here, because he is really working towards finally getting paid. He had to take a minimum again this year. He's vastly outplayed that. And he would be, 9th or 10th on the depth chart here, obviously helpful. And Jason Tate, I think he's a young player. And what I like about him, even though he's at $6.5 million, is he's locked up for 20 until 24, 25. And he's a guy that I think there's some upside there and can play. Jalen McDaniels, everything he said is right about him. I get a little queasy thinking about him and some of the stuff that's happened in his past off the court, bringing him onto the team. So I don't know what he's done. Yeah, just like filming. Yeah, and I'm not even going to get into it, but it's not great stuff, and it involves women. And then
goody.
Yeah, and then there's Sadiq Bey, who's he's only shooting like 30-something% from three, which is surprising to me. But
he shoots 100% versus Celtics.
He does, but you kind of see what he can do. But I think you're right. Kispert's a good one, and I think Chris Dunn. I really think Chris Dunn would work out pretty well here. So it'd be interesting to see what they do before 4:00. None of those guys are going to cost more than a couple draft picks and maybe a portion of the Grant Williams TPE, or something like Steve Matuak or Banton or something at the end of that bench. If you start talking about guys that go beyond the Grant Williams traded player exemption, like a DeLon.
It's not even worth talking about.
It's not, because then you're going to have to trade like Peyton Pritchard at that point.
Yeah, it's not happening.
I don't foresee that happening. Mike, let's run through this list.
I had fun preparing for this.
Yeah. So let's run through this list. I know as quickly as we can, but guys around the league that I think should be traded. So the first one I have is that could be traded is Dejounte Murray. What's interesting about this really isn't Murray as much. I know Atlanta's playing better. They have talent, but they're one of these franchises that, I look at and think, well, when are you going to make a decision on the direction of your franchise? You've gone through a couple coaches here. You continue to have the same problems where you underperform. You continue to try to build this thing around Trey Young. And maybe the problem is Trey Young. Maybe he's not a guy you build around. And if I was Atlanta, and I know this is easier said than done, I don't think I'm trading him at this deadline, Trey Young, I'm speaking, but I think I would have been having his name out there to get some feelers on what I get back. And then really consider in the offseason if my team doesn't turn around. If I still flounder around the play-in, I got to pick a direction for my franchise. But we're not talking about him because I don't think he's available at all. Mike, I thought Murray, people want to probably look at him at the Lakers. I look at Houston and Utah as two teams on the rise potentially with picks still, and I think he'd be a really good fit there. But I think he probably stays. What are your thoughts?
I think he probably stays. What I put on my list?
Stays.
Yeah, I think he probably stays. I don't know how it would work, but I feel like Toronto's got this youth movement going on where they brought in RJ Barrett, Manuel Quickly. They have Scotty Barnes. I felt like Murray might be a good fit there if they wanted to use some of their draft capital to make him their franchise point guard. So that's a team that I thought about.
Yeah.
They have to obviously give up some. You're talking about Emmanuel Quickly and probably some picks and maybe another player. So, but it might be worth it for them to think about the future, which I think they have with bringing in RJ Barrett. But yeah, I think it's going to be. I think what you're saying makes sense. Atlanta, for me, I wonder if it makes more sense to ride it out and then make you tough decisions this offseason. But we'll see what they do.
All right, the next guy is Spencer Dinwiddie, and this is kind of the exact opposite of Atlanta. Brooklyn's doing exactly what I just said. But they're
asking for so much for their players.
Well, they've thrown Mikal Bridges' name out there and asked for a ransom back, but what that does is it allows them to know what his value is. And if if he doesn't show the improvement going forward, they can make a decision this offseason now on what they're going to do with their franchise. I think that's just good management. I think it's good management, even if you don't really intend to trade for him. You start having the conversations, the seeds are planted, and it's something you can then build off in the offseason. Spencer Dinwiddie, I think he ends up staying. And the reason I think the Nets would love to unload him, I just don't think there's a lot of value for him, for teams. And I know you said the Thunder and Bertans in a few seconds. Maybe. I just thought the Thunder deal, so it could happen, but I just don't think there's a lot of value for Dinwiddie around the league.
Yeah, I know that when Dinwiddie is on the contending teams, he plays hard. He's obviously a guy who's clutch. He's had a lot of big moments, a lot of buzzer beaters. I think the Thunder could use a real upgrade at backup point guard and a scorer off the bench. So when I was playing around, I thought, that might be a fit, but probably won't happen. But I'm sure they want to try to move that Bertans contract to bring in a better player. So we'll see what they do with that.
I would think so too. The Finney Smith. I said Houston. I know I keep mentioning Houston. If I was Houston, I'd be a buyer. and I'd be looking
Me
to
too.
upgrade and get into the playoffs. And I think he fits exactly what Ime's doing there. A wing that can defend and shoot the three. You put Dallas, Mike, that makes sense. I don't know what they'd have to give up. But you put Holmes in there to match salaries, and that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, they need defense. That's what Dallas needs. And they probably regret having to trade him in the first place. So I do have a feeling he's going to end up back in Dallas. We'll see.
Also staying with the Nets, another guy, Royce O'Neal. I actually think this is I think a good landing place for him is Indiana. They need more wing defenders. They need guys that the best defender right now is Aaron Nesmith, and he's really not that good. He tries, but he's not that good at it. Royce O'Neal is a good defender. He's a good 3-and-D player. And you said, and you could, McConnell's an easy guy to match salaries with there.
Yep, absolutely.
And so you put the Bucks and send an end of the bench guys and a couple seconds, which they could try to do.
Yeah, they're desperate.
I don't know how the salaries match up at the end of the bench if it works, because it's a lot of money. It's $9.5 million.
Yep. I put it into the trade machine. It worked.
Okay. How many guys did you have to send out? Like 5?
I know. I typed them all in. I thought probably 3 guys or something like that. Yeah. I know one of the guys was a rotation player. His last name begins with P. He's a wing. I can never pronounce it right. But anyways, we can move on to the next.
Yeah, and I don't know what Pat Connaughton is making, but
he's making the same amount of money as Royce O'Neal.
Royce O'Neal would be an upgrade over him, but I don't know. I don't think the Nets would want him. Cam Thomas, I don't think he's going anywhere. I just don't think guys like that are really wanted around the league.
What are you talking about? He's coming to Boston.
I hate your idea. Go ahead, talk about it. I hate it, but
the Celtics traded first-round picks to get Cam Thomas. He's going to be coming off the bench and just lighting it up.
You would trade a first-round pick for a guy that doesn't play?
Yeah.
That won't play. Okay. I'm glad Brad Stevens in charge. Now that I said,
in my trade deadline scenario, Cam Thomas is coming to Boston, and Marcus Morris is getting bought out by Memphis after he gets traded there for Marcus Smart. And he's coming to Boston too. Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. So yeah, I don't want Cam Thomas. I like him. He's fun to watch. He does not pass. He's allergic to passing. And
he's perfect for the Washington Wizards. They should trade for him.
Yeah, the Washington Wizards. Oh God, the Washington Wizards. Talking about another hopeless franchise, Mike, is the Chicago Bulls. The next 2 players, DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic. DeRozan's on an expiring 28.6. I think they could get a decent amount for him if they decided to get a bidding war. It sounds like they're going to keep him. And then I guess try to re-sign him and just run it back. Like it just does not make any sense to me what they're doing. I don't understand it.
Jim, you say that, right? But then they have the highest attendance in the entire NBA. They sell out every night to watch this team.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they don't do anything.
Well, what's important to you, I guess, is it the attendance or is it actually winning? And I think you're right.
I think we know the answer. Yeah.
I think that's the issue. And you have him going to a Cavs. We shouldn't even get into the packages because it doesn't matter. He's not going anywhere. I thought maybe trying to figure out something with Golden State would be interesting. But he's not going anywhere. And again, Vucevic, he's on such a contract that he's only $18.5 million. He's signed through.
I think he's the perfect fit for the Thunder. I really do.
Yeah.
And the Thunder have like 2 or 3 young players that could match that 18, where the Bulls could say, this is a great package.
And you get picks back, but they won't do it.
Yeah.
It's not even worth spending much time on it because they're not going to do it. And it's too bad because they could really rebuild this thing. And that city and that franchise deserves like smart management, right? It's a great sports city.
Well, that's every franchise in that city. Every single franchise. They're all a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah, it's too bad.
I mean, the Bears haven't had a quarterback since like the 1940s.
I know. They did have one Super Bowl in there, and we know all about that here in New England.
Yeah.
Gordon Hayward, I don't think he's 31.5 million. It's tough to trade for a guy that's hurt all the time. Maybe he'll get bought out. Maybe he won't.
He's going to the Bucks.
Yeah, if I was him, I don't know if I would do a buyout. It'd have to be still give me a significant amount of that money. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
Kyle Lowry in the same situation, 29.6. He's not going to get traded. They're going to try to buy him out again. If I'm them, if I'm Kyle Lowry, I'm asking for a large chunk of that change. It's a lot to give up. The other Bridges, Miles Bridges, 7.9. I think he probably stays. If he didn't have all his all his domestic violence stuff, he'd be coveted. But I don't want to spend.
No, actually, I have a feeling he's going to end up in Phoenix. I do. I don't think Phoenix cares about that. I think he's going to Phoenix.
Well, I think whatever the Hornets could get for him, they'll send him out.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think it will take a huge package. I think whatever they get for him, they'll send him out.
Troy Brown, I think his name is in Phoenix. The contracts match up, so it's if you give the Hornets like 3 second-round picks and Brown, I mean, outside of this guy being a complete piece of shit, you're getting a 20-point score. I have a feeling that's going to happen.
I could see it. Yeah, and he's been playing well lately. Grant Williams, who started off great for Dallas, is now like really not well liked there at all. He's been playing poorly. I shouldn't say not well liked. I don't know that, but he's really well liked by Luka. He is. They're trying to move him, and so it's just an interesting thing. I don't think they actually end up doing it, but the fact that he's already on the block is pretty interesting. I thought a potentially interesting trade to make would be sending him out to Memphis for Marcus Smart. If the contracts are pretty similar, and I think there's some value to have Grant there, and it would certainly have value in Dallas to have Marcus Smart there. So I think you would have to send picks from Dallas to make that happen. But just something to think about. You have him going to the 76ers though, Marcus Smart.
I do. I think if Embiid was healthy. Now it probably doesn't make so much sense. And I think when I was doing this, I was, even though Embiid's out, I was doing it with Embiid playing. But if Embiid was healthy, I did think Marcus Smart made a lot of sense over Marcus Morris there. Because Smart brings some more defensive edge. He brings really good experience in the playoffs. I think he's just the type of guy that would fit into Philly and really amp up this rivalry with Boston. And I feel like Philly makes moves sometimes, like the Al Horford move, just to stick it to Boston. So it felt like a good fit for me that could actually happen. But I'm not so sure now that Embiid is questionable. But even still, you get Marcus Smart. He's locked up, right? 2 more years? So I felt like he'd be a really good fit playing next to Maxey in Philly.
Yeah, they're going into next year with oodles of cap space. So this would eat into that a little bit. But, I don't think you get the same – I don't think you see free agency like you used to anymore where superstars are switching teams. It seems like that kind of happens through trade. So if that's what you're eyeing, trading, this doesn't actually get in the way of that at all. Marcus Smart could be a key component of that trade, for salary purposes.
Right, because his contract.
Yeah, so I think that's not a bad idea for Philly in a lot of ways. Luke Kennard, over in Memphis, he's making 14.5. I have, and you agree with this trade. I have him going to the Magic. Desperately need 3-point shooting. They're not a great.
Makes a lot of sense.
And get rid of Ingles and someone at the end of their bench. Bataste, or however you say his name, and some picks. And, I think it would help them. And they're a team that if I'm them, I want to get in the playoffs desperately this year. I want that for my young players, that experience, and having a guy that can shoot certainly doesn't hurt. Malcolm Brogdon, we both don't think he's going to get traded. We don't have to spend time there. Bruce Brown, this is an interesting one, right? Um, he's certainly on the block. The team you keep hearing, and you understand why, is the Knicks. They seem to be lusting over him. And Tom Thibodeau, he'd fit with him perfectly. I actually say that the Cavs, LeVert, Dean Wade in a second, I think he'd be a great fit for Cleveland.
Both.
Maybe a couple seconds. Bruce Brown has a player option, so he could, return next year to wherever he goes. You have him not trading, and that they're going to re-up him. I mean, in Toronto.
I think it makes sense for Toronto. I do. I don't think they're in a place where they have to just blow it up completely. I think they're in a place where they have young players to build around, and if he's going to pick up that option next year, he could be a guy that becomes part of the core. I'm not trading him unless somebody's giving me like 4 second-round picks. I want a lot if I'm going to give up Bruce Brown. So but if I'm Toronto, if I know he's walking, then fucking let him go.
Yeah,
obviously.
If he doesn't want to be there. The next guy is Gary Trent Jr. You kind of, I think it's the same thing, right, for you. You wouldn't trade him unless you don't think he's coming back or you get blown away.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's young, 24.
Yeah. I'm not going to. Maybe the 76ers to me would be a fit.
He would be. Absolutely.
You wouldn't have to give up much. He's an expiring. You could Covington and Kuzmas, and make the deal. The next guy, this to me it doesn't sound like he's going to get traded. Jordan Clarkson. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't sound like but he'd be interesting. And I think he'd be great on the Knicks. You can make this work pretty easily with Fournier and picks and some salary.
He's replacing Emmanuel Quickly. It makes perfect sense for the Knicks. Yeah.
He's better than Emmanuel Quickly. And I think he would instantly help them, especially where you want to give Brunson some time off towards the end of the season. He could step right in and you wouldn't lose much offensively.
He's played in the NBA Finals. He's got a lot of experience. Like, he's a great pickup for a team.
Yeah. So John Collins, probably not going anywhere. But you have an interesting one going to the Pacers with Chris Dunn and 2 seconds for Obi Toppin.
Yeah, I think it was Obi Toppin and some other salaries. The reason I thought it was a fit, like, he could fit into that big man rotation. He really fits into how they play. So he'd have to accept coming off the bench for Siakam and Miles Turner. And then they really could use the defense of Chris Dunn in Indiana, I think. And Chris Dunn's the type of player that does get up and down. So he fits into their pace, at least. He's not a great offensive player, but he fits into how they want to play. So those are 2 players that I actually thought would help them. Collins would add some more versatility in shooting, which they love. He fits into that up and down pace. And then Chris Dunn would give them some much needed defense.
Yeah, no, I think that would be interesting trade, actually. I think that would be a really interesting trade. Going to the Pacers. It doesn't help them defensively at all. But it would be interesting. And I kind of mentioned maybe the Lakers for Hachimura and Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Kyle Kuzma, his name thrown around out there. I think he's having a really good statistical
season. Yeah, 2 years in a row he is. Yeah.
But he's on a really bad team. So take that for what it's worth. I kind of thought maybe teams looking towards the future. Houston, maybe Memphis looking at next year, adding him to their core, where Memphis should be really good again. You mentioned the Magic, which makes some sense. And there's ways to get that done. He's not, but I don't know if it's a little bit redundant with the Magic because he's not a shooter. And he's got some size. He can shoot okay and defend okay. I feel like they have guys like that are better than him already. But, it's interesting. Andrew Wiggins, I don't think we have to spend much time on him.
No.
The other one guy that does sound like he's going to get traded that I didn't have on this list is Kelly Olynyk. He was rumored to go to the Celtics. I think that was just...
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's just Danny Ainge upping his value. Maybe it's Brad Stevens.
His best fit is Miami. Those were his best days. He should go back to the Heat.
Yeah,
it's a marriage made in heaven there.
You're hearing a lot of rumors about Golden State, and that would make some sense too. He would fit in quite well with the Warriors, I think, and that would make some sense. Mike, the one more guy, I guess PJ Washington could be going somewhere, and we both say the 76ers would probably be a decent fit. Gives him some size, can play the backup five as even though he's undersized and can shoot and is on a decent contract. Signed through 25, 26, 16 million. So he would definitely help them. Again, it just becomes what do they actually want to do with Embiid out? And I think if I'm them, that's really more interesting question. Sure, I want to stay out of the play-in because I think being in the playoffs is still important, whether Embiid is there or not. And the second thing is any move I make, I'm looking towards next year and beyond to help Embiid and to give him a better core and also give him opportunities where he's not going to be relied upon as much. Where we could go into every season and say, Joel, you're just playing 60 games, and everyone's fine with that. And it's really the injury, even the way the Sixers have handled that, it's tough to understand exactly what's going on. They, for whatever reason, won't use the term surgery. I just have a hard time believing that he's going to be back this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Wojnarowski said 4 weeks, which, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't believe that. So we'll see, right? And if he does come back in 4 weeks, then shame on the 76ers. They should be telling him no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do not ruin that guy's career, please. As much as I hate fucking Philadelphia, and because Embiid's on the team, I hate him right now. Do not ruin that guy's career. Like, he's great for the NBA. He needs to be healthy. Something to keep an eye on, Jim. I think the buyout market, especially if like Gordon Hayward gets bought out, say Bridges ends up getting bought out because he doesn't get traded. I think that's where Milwaukee is going to be hustling, and what they can offer, I do think, is we can offer you playing time if you're a wing. Like, you can even come here and maybe start. So I do think there's an opportunity for Milwaukee to still get better, even though they don't have assets. So that's something I'm watching.
The one question I have with the buyout market, and this involves research, and maybe you just know off the top of your head. So under the new CBA, you can't sign. So if you're into the second apron like the Bucks are, you can't sign
that's right.
anything more than what you have available. So like if you just have the mid-level, that's it. And so if a guy was making 31 million, he can't sign for the mid-level with you. So it has to be what his contract was. So he had to be like a mid-level player to sign with you, essentially, is how the CBA is written. Now, I don't know if that starts next year or if that's this year. But
I think it starts this year because I remember reading like tweets from that guy Keith Smith who was like, "No, Gordon Hayward cannot sign with the Celtics if he's bought out." I remember seeing that on X. Like, so it was very clear that if Gordon Hayward's bought out, he can't sign with the Celtics for some CPA new thing.
Yeah. So the nuance on this is important. We can get into the buyout, I think, after the All-Star break, but I'm not sure the Bucks can do things like that.
Well, then good. Fuck them. Awesome. All right. Go Celtics.
So, all right. With that, hey, thanks for listening. Again, like I said, this will not be current by the time you listen to it. What we did last year and what we'll try to do this year, and, we have busy lives, so it's no guarantee. But if a trade is made as it relates to the Celtics, one of us will record our take on it. We'll add it to the beginning of the pod. And we'll just go from there. So either me or Mike will take 5 minutes. We'll record what our breakdown of the trade, if and when it happens, and we'll add it to the start of the pod. Mike, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, we're definitely not going to break down the Washington game. So for you Wizards fans, that's not a game that we have any interest in. So I would expect to hear from us if there's a Celtics trade. And if not, we will certainly break down the Miami Heat trade. I do think, Jim, one thing I disagree with you on this pod, that's the only game the Celtics are going to show up with full effort for the rest of this half of the season. So I'm looking forward to that.
I hope so. Here's an interesting Wizards as we close. Do you know they're tied with the easiest schedule in the league with the Sixers so far? Which is just amazing considering they don't play the Wizards. So, all right, everyone, have a great one and happy NBA trade deadline day.